Tom Dinardo, two men fighting in one with me. And we are playing with ideas around the wounded healer. Our theme is very much around adding value this month. And I met Tom a couple of weeks ago, and I'm very interested and excited to share a little bit more about you and your ideas and your background. So, Tom, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for having me on your podcast. I appreciate it. Um, it's uh, it's interesting. I firmly believe that um, in this time that we're in, that old cliche phrase, "water finds its own level," really seems to be coming into play. I've found that there's been a lot of people in my life that, for whatever reason, spirit has taken them out. Toxic people, etc. And then there's this whole influx of people that are coming in to my life, people that I resonate with, that we vibrate at the same level. And it's a real blessing, And social media for the craziness that it is, the blessing
Yeah.
sometimes is that you can meet these people around the world that you have common ground with and that you share a resonance and a harmony with. Um, so a little bit about my background. Pretty much, I would say my first angelic or God experience was at the age of 3.5. I was standing outside of my house, and it was a summer day in California, in San Jose, and uh, just beautiful, warm weather, no wind. And all of a sudden, this ether started coming around me. It was the craziest thing. It was like a fog on a sunny day. And, I had thought just moments before about my life at 3.5. What am I going to do? And I was thinking, as a child would think, I said, well, I know that there's kindergarten, first grade, etc. And I'm counting on my fingers up to the grades. And I said, well, I know there's a grade between high school, and then there's high school. And then I said, I think I get married, get a job, and have kids. And that's when this ether came around me. And I call it the voice from within that I've learned to trust throughout my life. And the voice said, Tom, you are here to do a lot more than to go to school, to get married, and to have kids. And the ether slowly went away. But I remember, as like the old saying goes, they say that a child is wiser than the wisest of yogis. And I remember just seeing the world through a child's eyes. But it's hard to explain. It was like a kinesthesia.
Mm.
Um, Colors seem brighter, smells seem more potent and aromatic. And um, just my senses took it all in. And that lasted till about 9 or so. And then my world changed. And for all intents and purposes, no regrets. Everything that happens in Native American beliefs, everything that happens for a reason, by fate, by destiny, not by chance, by coincidence. And I had one of those kind of lives that, you know, was like in the movie Radio Flyer.
Yeah.
It's a life a child shouldn't have. But yet I did have it. And it's those lessons that I now realize were some of the most powerful and potent in my life. So I grew up predominantly in a patriarchal family that I was brought up basically being raised to believe that I was Sicilian and Irish. And it all focused on the men in the family, the two patriarchies. And my grandmother on the Irish side of my family had married my grandfather in 1927. So she was about 14 and a half, 15, and he was about 21. And that was in Wisconsin in 1927. And it turns out that she was Native American, um, likely Métis, Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, and that they had come over at that time. Her grandfather, my great great grandfather, was likely born in Ontario, and they came around Lake Superior and down into Wisconsin and or Minnesota and into Wisconsin. And so, anyhow, there had always been talk as a child about having this Native American ancestry, but the men, the patriarchy always had suppressed this, tamped it down, but it was still a murmur. And the genealogy was finally completed a couple of years ago. And anyhow, I had always been interested in this going back decades. And so in the 1994, I had an opportunity to go to Fort Berthold, North Dakota, which is their three affiliated tribes, Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara.
Mhm.
And I studied with a man named Tom Demaray, High Holy Bull, and his teacher, Sadie Mann, and kind of went through just an exploration of not only my heritage, but the Red Road, which had predominantly been my spirituality and my philosophy. Even though I was born or baptized Catholic, I'm a recovering Catholic. And so I always gravitated towards other world religions, Native American spirituality, Hinduism, Buddhism.
Mhm.
But one night I'd done Vision Quest a couple of times when I was there. And in a sweat lodge ceremony, Sadie Mann, my teacher's teacher, had actually given me the name Madze Migi Maru Nubish, or two men fighting in one. And it was shortly after that, in 1994, it was one of the most mystical experiences I've ever had in my life. I was up on a butte and I was facing east. And to the north, as I was looking towards Canada, you could see the Aurora Borealis. And to my back and to the west, there was the sunset and this beautiful gloaming like a Maxfield Parrish painting. And to the south, it was a starry night. And as I looked east, it was jet black. And you could hear a storm moving from the east to the west towards me. And off in the distance, you could see a couple of flashes, and you heard the claps of thunder like a giant lumbering towards me. Boom, boom, boom. And within a couple of minutes, the raindrops fell, and they were as large, they just literally filled the palm of your hand. And that's when um, I had the Heyoka calling, or Wakinyan, which is known as the thunder beings, touched me, blessed me. And the lightning came down through my left shoulder and uh, pinned me against my car. And I could feel it burning. I thought I had an exit wound, which is what sometimes happens. And I jumped back in the car. Thankfully, it started, and I'm going through these roads in North Dakota, which when it rains, they call it the North Dakota gumbo. It's just this muddy slick.
Yeah.
And I ran back into the house and told my teacher what happened. And he had me take my shirt off because we thought that there was a burn. And sometimes that happens that way, that there was nothing. I mean, but my body felt like it was on fire for 3 days. And um, so Heyoka is what is also called the sacred clown, or sometimes it's called the trickster. It's a Lakota Sioux word, Heyoka, and it means, they'll say they call them weather doctors sometimes, but they carry a very powerful medicine, and they're known to be empaths and healers. Now, I want to be clear for the record, I've never called myself a Heyoka. I've had the Heyoka calling. I have respect for the Lakota way. In the Lakota way, one of the other steps, the final steps, is what they call dog medicine, which I won't go into, but it's basically, I have not gone through that step yet. It involves the killing of an animal, and I choose not to do that.
Yeah.
But I've had the similar experiences as Heyoka with literally having effects on the weather. Um, I resonate more with the empathic side of things. And during that time in the 1990s, when I had come back from the reservation, I more or less made my living, if you will, as a faith healer. And one of the gifts was, at first I thought I was dying. I could walk into a room and I was feeling all these pains everywhere all the time. And I thought, what in the world is going on with me? Am I dying? And then I started to realize, no, I was feeling
Other
the
people.
parts in people's bodies that were the most impacted. So I started testing this theory. Like if I walked in a room, I would go up to someone and say, "Hey, how's your left elbow doing?" And they would say, "Oh, it's doing better. Did I tell you about that? I had surgery." And then I said, "Yeah, you mentioned it last week." So I started testing this and it was spot on. And as I continued doing the healing work, or it's God, the creator through me, I'm just the vessel, it became more and more powerful. And um, and then eventually I was going up and down the coast in California. I would get requests very much like a medicine man to go and do this. And I did it on love offerings, but um, I didn't charge per se. And then uh, because you don't charge for healing work, I threw my hat in a while trying to do psychic readings. And but that changes you. It really, in my opinion, changes you not in a good way. And so it did not feel right. So I stopped that. And long story short, living in the San Francisco Bay Area in the late 90s, if you were not really making a certain amount of money, you weren't getting ahead, you were falling behind. And so that's when I had really started getting into the creation of my two businesses, which I had formed a few years earlier. And that's when I say I had fallen off the path for about 25 years. I got totally immersed in the world of materialism and self aggrandizement and really got lost. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I found, um, I jokingly say I've hit rock bottom several times, and I keep a second home there. and
Yeah.
um, and this last experience, I mean, it really took me down. But that was the aha moment, the epiphany that had me realize, oh, you know, it doesn't have to be this way.
Mm.
And and so I really turned inward and began every single day praying, meditating. And much like in my early 20s, I started having Kundalini experiences. And since it had been a good 25 years since I had had one, when the first one happened, it's a little mind blowing. I mean, the first one that I ever had at 24, I was if you can imagine being in the room, I can see the ceilings and the wall, et cetera, around me, but yet through my mind's eye, it was as if I was seeing blue plumes of smoke coming up through a pink ocean. And I thought I was having a psychotic break.
Yeah.
And there's actually a term in Western medicine called physio Kundalini syndrome.
Mm.
And usually what they do is they give someone Ativan or a sedative, lorazepam,
That's
to
so
calm them
true.
down.
Yeah.
But when the second one happened a couple of years ago. Pretty soon they were coming rapid fire a couple of years ago, just boom, boom, boom. And it was much like, an airline pilot. I just, said, okay, I think I know what's happening. And it was almost like the voice saying, ladies and gentlemen, we've hit a bit of spiritual turbulence, and please wear your seatbelt, buckle in. When we get through this rough weather, we'll let you know.
Yeah.
And unlike the experience 25 years earlier, this time in my mind's eye, I was seeing um, multi-dimensional geometric shapes that were black and white and shades of gray, very much like Moritz C. Escher drawings, if you can imagine, that were
Yeah.
moving. So it's a little
Yeah.
discombobulating. So that's when it was like, okay, like the pilot
Hold
says,
on.
just,
Yeah.
hang in there for the next couple of days. It's going to be like you just drank 5 gallons of coffee. You're not going to be sleeping too well. And you're going to see these images for a while until the mind's eye and the chakras close back down.
Wow, that's intense, and that's kind of answered the question I wanted to bring to you as to the kind of line you drew between empathy or being an empath and healing. And it's the empath is the doorway to the healing. As you explained it, that's where you find, where to touch or where to approach in in that field. You also do a lot of talking and writing and interesting things around the two things, empathy and, or not empathy, being an empath and compassion. Um, and I was just looking at one of the things that you wrote recently today, and how you drew connections to people that we all know and admire, whether in spiritualism or religion or, whatever it is, that clearly were empaths, um, and use that as a connection point, I think.
Yeah, it's ultimately, and I'm not saying, I mean, the level of involvement that any person chooses in spirituality is completely unique to themselves. As for example, I was listening to Sadhguru on a YouTube um, channel, and he was talking about the um, King's Yoga or Kundalini
Mm.
Yoga, and he said it's a yoga that will either make you mad or it will liberate you. And he said, it's not to say that a successful business person could not do Kundalini yoga, but the discipline that would be required, it would almost be counterproductive, because he says you come to a path in the road where you make the decision, do I go this way in business and become successful in business, or do I go this way and, in essence, lead a life of devotion to creator and live a life of contemplation? And ultimately 2 years ago, I had also suffered two really catastrophic back injuries. Um, One was a subarticular extrusion in my lower back, L5 S1, which is spinal cord fluid shooting through a disc. And the other one is at T10, which is an impingement against the spinal cord. And so it was very scary, because the doc, basically neurosurgeon, said, you are going to become paralyzed. It's just a matter of time. And it was that, oh shit moment, the way he frames it to me, it's like, he just says, do you have family? Do you have people who can look after you, who can what, said, Doc, I really don't like the way you're framing this situation. He says, well, bottom line, we need to get you in for emergency surgery. And as soon as he said that, again, the voice from within said, do not do this surgery. And every day I prayed for months, couple of months, specifically the lower back pain. And one day I just, they call it, for example, they talk about visualization and spirituality, but then they take it from visualization in some New Thought churches or affirmative prayer type situations. They talk about realization.
Mm.
And so one day I just got to the point of, um, I just realized I'm going to heal and I'm going to get through this. And the pain in my lower back went away. Now, the condition, at least on x rays and MRIs, did not seem to appear to resolve, but that pain had gone. And for 4.5 or 6 weeks prior to that, it was as if my body was on fire. And I remember one night in particular, it was so bad. I was at a relative's house and I was caretaking him. He's very elderly. So I'm at my elder's house and the pain was so intense. I literally felt like someone poured gasoline on me and threw a match. And I'm drinking rum, I'm smoking cannabis. I've taken Tylenol, I'm wearing a lidocaine patch, I'm putting diclofenac cream on. I can't shake this. So I'm going out again and smoking pot. And he kept, my elder said, go out, smoke some more, smoke some more. And I come in and I'm sitting down and I'm rocking back and forth in the chair. And I said, if this continues, I'm gonna
Yeah.
swallow a bullet. Uh, and that's when these two bright lights had filled the room. And when that happened, I literally looked up and I knew, and my elder was very gifted with second sight. And so I said, who's in the room with us? I said, I think one of them is Gabriel. Or I said, one of them is Biodish, or one of my guides. And I said, the other one I think is, I'm not sure. I said, I think it's one of the archangels, and it was Gabriel. And then this happened again. As soon as they came in, the pain went away. And then 3 or 4 nights later, I was in the same situation. And they came in again, and the pain was gone. And so now I'm contending. I've had second opinions with the T10 disc impingement, and it again a couple of months ago had to get a couple of shots of Toradol. It was as if I was dragging a half dead leg. So when people see me walk and they say, you look fine, everything's good. And what's really crazy, without going into too much, is that they think, oh, well, you hit a real hard time. Well, then I say, no, you guys have no idea. I mean, it's like, how far back do you want to go? I mean, literally, it's like at 8 years old, I saw a friend of mine get shot before my eyes, in San Jose, California. Um, I have seen things that people should not see. I was one of the youngest EMTs in my county. I'd been volunteer firefighter. I was a peace officer. Um, and I've seen suffering at a level that most people don't see in their lives or witness. It's me, may as well have lived through a war. And then when people hear about this recent accident, I say, well, then there's what happened in 2012, falling off a flight of stairs onto concrete, left tricep ripping off the elbow, left quadricep ripping off the knee, right shoulder, chromioplasty, arthroscopy, neck and back injuries, partial knee in the right knee. And that took 4 years to recover. They said, you'll never walk the same. And I said, watch me.
That's me.
And then in 2021, with multiple car accidents in between, I just had this luck. And then in 2021, same thing, right tricep rupture, more neck and back injuries. And so people would joke and say, you've lived the life of Job. And yes, there's been times in my life that I have cursed Creator, I've cursed God, I've said, you know, take me out, you know, am I just some test for your pleasure to see how much can you put someone through? But that's kind of me on the pity pot. And then I realize now that when you look at, say, for example, in Native American culture, you look at medicine men and or Heyoka,
Mm.
and they have had rough lives. Um, they're not easy, especially Heyoka. Uh, and some of the most famous examples, like in that article, I referenced black elk.
Yeah.
And another famous Heyoka who came after black elk, who died in the late 70s, was John Fire Lame Deer. And he had been involved in the American Indian movement. And these holy men, these medicine men, had basically been through the wood chipper, if you will, of life. But that you come to a place and an understanding where when you're doing healing work with someone, it's one thing. It's like if someone says to you on the street and you're just anybody, oh, my mother just had cancer. You'll hear people say, oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. And it's an intellectual understanding. With people who are in the medicine ways, healers, it's goes beyond a physical and an intellectual knowing to a compassion, to an empathy. It's when someone says, I understand, it's I'm feeling, I'm experiencing
Mm.
what they are experiencing. And then you can take that at a far deeper intrinsic level, which is when you are healing or involved in healing, first thing I always do, and I know we're kind of like, sorry, I guess
No,
it's a
no.
stream of thought here.
Exactly. That's
This
what it
is
is about. Yeah.
yeah, this is flow conscious.
Yeah.
It's healing is when I'm asked to get involved in healing. The first thing I always do is I say a prayer. Uh, I always ask the person, um, do you accept healing in the name of God? Yes. Then I ask, Mother, Father, Creator, I ask for healing in your name for the highest good for so and so, or for if it's a prayer and I'm doing a prayer chain, because it seems like my prayer chains today are 30, 40 people in a night, so I'm not,
Yeah.
but I'm taking, I don't, when I pray again, it's not the type of prayer that we're taught as kids, which is to beseech, to ask. It's a knowing. I know healing is happening in this person now because you, Creator, the Spirit of Creator, is perfect, harmonious, balanced. There is no pain. There is unobstructed freedom. That spirit of you, that beauty, that joy, that purity, that health, that wholeness, that balance is now is operating in and as and through this person and whomever their name may be. And the same thing with the healing is when I pray and ask for healing in the name of Creator for the highest good, I'll ground first. I do my grounding exercises, and then I open up and I start to scan their body. from head to toe, and I look for and feel what I can see.
Mm.
And then from there, I let that move through me and down through my feet and out into the earth. And but God also gives us free will. So some people have to hold on to whatever it is, whether it's karma, they're burning karma, uh, they're needing this life lesson, or some people they can literally let it go.
Mm.
And everyone is unique and different. And when I really started getting involved in this 30 years ago or so, it that's when other tertiary effects started to happen where um, I could start to see people's auras
Mm.
and um, started having clairsentient, clairaudient experiences. And this, by the way, I should also say, happened. The healing work that I did happened right after I got back from Fort Berthold. But I think really a couple of years before that, what had activated it was that I had two near-death experiences,
Mm.
um, which I can talk about, or we could do
Yeah,
that on another
I
show.
think we're going to move that into the next one because this is
Yeah,
fascinating, and there's so many questions I'd love to ask around
sure.
the non-denominationality, if there's a word like that, of all of this. There's a mix of things, which is really what spirituality is, isn't it? And yeah, there's beauty in all of it, and this is beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm going to catch up with you on the next episode, and we are going to go a little bit deeper and see more of the magic that you channel, if I can say it that way.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Michelle. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. Blessings.